This is a simulation of a very simple market where everyone's trading with each other, and each person across here, this is their balance. So these little blue lines are 100 people. This is how much money they've got in their pocket. And down here, this is the amount of inequality in the system, and this is kind of how much they're trading together. So these people in the market, they're also trading with each other all the time. And so if we just kind of let that play here, we can see that over time, some shops are more preferred than others. So you get some people who have quite a bit more money than others. And this is just normal. This is what happens when someone has a shop that has rotten potatoes. You know, this person is making very little money that month, for instance. And this person has something in high demand. And over time, you can see that, you know, it sort of stabilizes. There's a bit of inequality, but this is not really bad inequality. I mean, a Gini index of 12 is better than any country in the world. So this distribution of wealth is actually not a bad distribution at all. This is fine. You know, there's some people that have very little, some people have more, but the difference between the two is not terribly high, and there's this nominal amount of trade going on. Now, what is the simplest thing we can change to this very simple simulation to mimic the inequality we have today? And so all we do is we allowed one of these top vendors to become a bank. And in fact, any of the vendors, when they get enough money, they're allowed to start giving out loans at interest. And all of a sudden, you see a huge, huge jump in the amount of money in the system in general, because actually they're creating money now. We're allowing some for-profit institution now in this village to sort of create money. And we can see what happens to the inequality index. And very quickly, inequality jumps up to about the level of South Africa. So this is the distribution of wealth in South Africa. We've got about 4 people here who own just about everything. And at the same time, you can see trade really, really starts to drop because people aren't able to pay back those debts. And so this is basically very similar to what we have today. Just by introducing interest-bearing debt on loans with this magnitude, we're able to mimic the inequality we see today. We've given over the power to for-profit private banks. Their goal is really, in a sense, to make sure everyone's in debt, because that's how they're making the profits. It's as if you had given for-profit private banks the ability to produce oxygen that we are all dependent on. That's literally what's basically happened. We need money. Money is something, it's not a bad thing. It's something that we need to interact with one another. It's one of the tools we have as humans. If we give that tool over to private interests for profit, essentially what we're doing is we're sort of chaining ourselves. We're creating sort of an indentured servitude to these large banks and whoever has most of the money. There was always this question, I think everyone has this question, like, how did we get like this? Like, what happened, you know? Why do we live like this? You know, you look around your community and everyone who's going to work every day, and as a kid, and you just wonder, why do you do this? Why do you go to work every day like that? So many people around me don't like their lives. You know, they go to work every day and they're in this sort of like doldrum of existence. These financial systems, they're essentially programmed. We've programmed our society. We're sort of like ants. So there's a few ants that are really benefiting from this system, and the rest of the ants are just workers. And the reciprocity between the two isn't obvious. In Silicon Valley, you get the Bill Gates or Steve Jobs as the elite saviors of the world. And if you make enough money, you can become a philanthropist king. The queen bee, or the queen ant in this case, actually the wealthy aren't giving back to society even a fraction of what they're receiving. And mostly they're hedging all that money away so that they can go live in isolation and live in, you know, their own sort of sanctuaries. There was no reciprocity there. It's sort of like a Don Quixote moment. The idea of fighting back against that, like we should all be able to contribute to society in some way. If it's only the elite that get to contribute, it's a very sad world for the rest of us, really. And so yeah, putting on some armor and running out to a community to save them or something, I see myself somehow foolish in that sense of just like naive or just hoping, you know. And so it's a fool's errand in a sense. It's like, well, just trying something really new, and you have no idea if it's going to work or not. what we want to do now is introduce a secondary currency. So now we've added another currency here in green to allow these people who are in huge amounts of debt just to trade with each other. And all of a sudden, trade shoots back up and inequality is going back down. So now they're spending their money back into the system. And so this is what we want to see. This is kind of the hope, is that by introducing these secondary currencies, that they restabilize the economy.